The two new co-directors of the Illuvium Overworld reveal heaps of information on April 11 about the new features coming to the ecosystem, as well as when we might be able to see the game and test it for ourselves. I initially came to Illuvium excited for an adult creature capturer game, and it seems like we might finally be getting exactly that, maybe even before the end of 2025. There are a total of 23 slides they showed us in the presentation, with all sorts of interesting information presented at the town hall, but I'm going to show you only the 12 most important pieces of information we learned about the MMO-Lite and the team's current plans. We are going to start real basic here and then get to the really juicy new features and implementations planned for the MMO-Lite towards the end of the video. The first thing is the market analysis. We could see that they talked about how cross-platform open world ARPGs outperform everything, especially as they go on mobile. We could see the Genshin Impact made billions of dollars in revenue, and everything that came afterwards, things like Wuthering Waves and things like that, all did the exact same. People went a grand open sandbox adventure. They want it on their mobile devices and they want it constantly. That is a big piece of inspiration that the new co-directors are taking from this. They also said that mobile represents a large opportunity space, but it requires a lot of work to get off the ground. So although they're not doing that straight away, they're keeping it in the back of their mind. They want to eventually transition into that at some stage. But the other thing they mention is that it's hard to spin up a sci-fi setup on mobile, and they're probably going to lean more into the fantasy side of Illuvium rather than doubling down on the sci-fi aspects of it all and focusing a little bit more in that fantasy sort of realm. They also had this to say about building up and different progression systems inside the game.
Stuff and talking about it, but this is kind of talking a little more about that synergy system idea. So you're working your way up tracks. Maybe this turns into some kind of web tree. Maybe it looks a little different than this, but the idea is you're trying to build up investment into certain synergies or classes. And as you do that, you're both gaining kind of raw power in your stats, but you're also unlocking things and maybe even combining things. So you're an empath, there's an empath ability, but when you get high enough fire alongside it, that becomes a fire empath ability. Weapon unlocks, Alluvial companion unlocks, and abilities would all be placed on this track, and you could kind of build your character in a really open-ended way to pick and choose the pieces you want.
I really love this idea of different progression. You can see it behind my head right there. I really love this. All the different things you do in the game build up all of your different tracks. Maybe you have one for composites, I don't know, but it's more like you get a lot of fire investment, a lot of earth investment, and then you get like some magma composite abilities later on down the skill tree. I think this is really cool, and as it like adds to your companions and your Aluvials as well, I think this is a really great idea. It's going to enhance the gameplay so much. It can also range of progression, they've also said, can gate the power you gain right at the start of the new MMO-Lite, which helps unlock some of that build creativity. You might not be able to use your level 500 Scoriox when your ranger is only level 2, for example. Weapon and Alluvial companions unlock push down different areas on the track, and they merge together into composites, like he said just there, and it adds so much build creativity. The next thing they talked about was the ARP Aix system, and I want to let them talk to you about that first.
A lot. I mean, right now, equipment grants you travel abilities. They get upgraded as you upgrade gear. There's so much opportunity for this to do more. We're talking about adding more slots. We'll see how that goes. That's probably not happening super soon because it means creating more assets, but definitely exciting potential there. We want to look at something more like an ARPG Apex or mod system where each piece of gear is unique. You're trying to chase one that has the certain synergy rolls you want, or you're trying to chase one that has base damage plus a certain amount of synergy or whatever. There's already a lot of work that's been done in the past by members of the design team on kind of laying out how an Apex system like this could work. And I feel like as soon as we get this hooked up to all the really cool items we already have, there's just going to be kind of an explosion of, build
every single piece of gear will be unique. It might give you like magma damage plus 10%, and you need to find 100 of these pieces of gear until you get the one you need, or you can buy it on the marketplace or whatever it might be. But apparently a lot of the work for this has already been done behind the scenes, which I thought was a little bit surprising, but it's really cool to see that gear in the game will become unique. Maybe Aluvials will become more unique, we don't know. But I think this would be a really nice addition to the game, especially as we go more into that raiding MMO-Lite sort of feature set. This will be really integral to making the game more interesting and giving you a reason to grind a boss for hours on end as well, which is something we wouldn't have if we just threw bosses in right at this moment. You can chase specific synergies or certain base stats, and they have random synergy buffs and other systems to randomize what they do. It can help you reach certain synergy thresholds in what we just talked about in your passive skill tree, or like boss items could actually unlock special abilities. Maybe it makes your magma expand wider, or maybe it makes your magma apply frost as well. That could be a really unique boss thing that gets dropped to the player. Also, please, if you enjoyed this video, if you're learning something new, if you're learning more about Illuvium and it's getting you excited, please like down below, subscribe, leave a comment if you have some questions or anything for me. I really, really appreciate it. The other thing they talked about is that their first plan for the game is to remove the arena combat and have the alluvial capture method inside the overworld in a little bit of a different way. They want to make sure that finding the alluvial is more special, and then capturing them is even more rare and special as well. You find them first, then you battle them, and then you capture them, and at that point you might even just get an egg, and we'll talk about that at the end of the video. You'll also be able to swap between alluvials depending on the battle at hand. You probably have 2 or 3 in your inventory. You could swap between them at every different time, but they also change up your abilities and your build on the fly. They would basically, like, maybe you have a magma build, but you're getting a bunch of those points from having a seer out on the field. When you swap that to a Jotun, you get a bunch of the air and water points for frost instead in your progression tree. And so it actually swaps up your build entirely. It will add to the dynamic ARPG combat, and I'm excited for this for co-op as well, where different alluvials synergize with your teammates in different ways. The next one we have is they're looking to revamp the new player experience. They're tying it deeper into the lore, and a new player is part of the first expeditions into the world, discovering alluvials and the obelisks. There is a quest line that they will actually engage with. So instead of just a tutorial and then go and hunt alluvials, they'll be like, okay, we need you to go and hunt this fiery ox. Go out, hunt it, find it. They'll give you little quests as you're going. You might need to find its droppings or something, and then eventually go and find the creature. I don't know. But that will all be a part of major quest lines that introduce you into the game, get you in, and probably maybe a main storyline of some kind. There's a central storyline that has them pursuing Arlen and learning about alluvials. They also want to add many new side quests. I think Trevor's really excited to add so many new side quests, uncovering the fun and hidden mysteries of Illuvium. The other thing is Trevor is keen to make the exploration a large component of the game. This is something, I didn't play a whole lot of Genshin Impact, but those who did know that this is a really big part of it, where each zone would have like a meta tracker for exploration. Basically be like, there's 8 points of interest in this zone. You've only encountered 6 of them. Try and find the next 2. The best example I have from my personal game experience is probably Breath of the Wild does this really, really well. Try and find all the Korok seeds, for example. That sort of stuff, I think, will keep people really much more engaged than they would be. Even if they're not super into that, might find 2 or 3 of them to be like, there's only 2 left. I want to try and find it. I want to see if I can uncover those last few mysteries in this region. It gives you a goal outside of your normal goals to work towards. And it's great for achievement hunters as well. So this is actually really going to lift up the entire experience of the MMO-Lite a lot. The next thing is we're going to talk about Aluvials and how they will remain a special and rare encounter in the game.
Aluvials are, they're a very special thing. We want them to be more of like a more rare encounter, something that you're looking for, not something that you're seeing everywhere. So we need more NPCs. So what are we going to have? We're going to have splinter groups. So there's a lot of people aboard your ship. So as the story unfolds, some of those people are going to splinter off and form opposing groups because they don't believe the same things that you believe.
So I really like this overall idea, okay? The idea is that the Aluvials are the thing you're capturing and acquiring, and they're really special. They're basically relegated to boss battle type stuff. Everything else, they're adding all these new enemies and things that'll be your commonplace enemies, which is really good because an Atlas should feel special. But when you go on World of Warcraft, you kill like 500 gnolls or they're giant rats and things like that. Those are just like standard boring enemies, but all the creatures in Illuvium are really special and unique, and they should stay that way in the game. There's a few different, there's some sort of major AI villain that controls the enemies they talk about. I'm not going to spoil too much of that. You should go watch the town hall yourself. But they have the Corroded, which are enemy corrupted drones. Revenants, which are like malformed humanoid creatures, kind of like technoid zombies, they describe them, and Leviathans, which are massive creatures that exist outside of the dome bubbles. However, some of the smaller ones will be inside the domes that you can fight, or something like that. That's what they describe. The other thing is breaches. I'm glad to see that this is going to make a name for itself inside the MMO-Lite, because I think roguelike gameplay is really trending right now at the very least, but really it's highly replayable, and the MMO-Lite desperately needs replayable content inside it. Basically, they'll be discoverable mini dungeons. You can just jump into them while you're exploring the rest of the world. They can contain treasure, mini bosses, and more, and that's how you're going to get a lot of your loot drops and things like that, I think. And they want to keep some of the roguelike gameplay elements, but they're mostly folding those roguelike elements that have already been built into the progression systems, but also inside through the gameplay of the breaches specifically. The other thing is they presented this list of planned features. You can see it right there. And some may not be available at the initial launch, and it will be iterated upon over time. You can see ARPG combat, exploration tracker, new discoverables, new enemies, ranger progression, alluvial capture, alluvial progression, weapons and gear, multiplayer, world bosses, and quests, which are a stretch goal, which is surprising. I thought that was going to be a much bigger component. But things like ranger progression, new enemies and discoverables, and exploration tracker are all really critical here. Combat obviously is very important. And then alluvial capture and progression are really big here, weapons and gear. And then I think multiplayer, I would like to see that become a main high priority, but the last two world boss and quest looks like they're going to be maybe iterated upon over time, but they want to get this to us as fast as they can, which I personally really appreciate. Let's have a look at what's currently in progress for the game.
Already in progress, like the chart that Steven showed.
He's talking about the paper design.
Progression mechanics. We've been just doing a lot of this brainstorming with different members of the team, and just trying to come up with at least what seems the best ideas on paper. And then natural next step is to put that in prototype. We're trying to do fast and dirty prototyping to just really get the feel for systems. The disadvantage to this is that like the stuff that you prototype generally is not production code, so like you have to kind of like rebuild it production ready, but you get to the part where you find the fun a lot faster.
Okay, so this is the one huge mistake Illuvium made up until this point. They didn't prototype a fun gameplay loop before doing everything else. You have to prototype that thing, and it sucks because you can go through like a whole year of just having this rough, dirty prototype until you find something that's enjoyable to play. But that is the focus of the new co-directors, and that gets me more excited than anything else in this presentation, besides the eggs thing, and we'll get to that at the end. That's in the thumbnail. But yeah, so I really like that they're focusing on the prototyping, the focusing on getting the fun. They will have to rebuild a lot of those systems once they find the gameplay loop they're happy with. But at least we know it's probably going to be a really good gameplay loop. I'm sure people from the community are going to be able to test that stuff out as well, give feedback, and make sure that it's truly a good game. And then they can lock everything else in. Our artists are fast. They're solid. They make some good work. Once they get the chance to go at it, they'll get it done really, really fast. I don't doubt that for a second. So that is really exciting. They've also said the concept art has been done for many of the new art assets. I think they're mostly talking about the new enemies and things like that. So that's really great to see as well. Now, Kieran here talks about the next steps of the game. Ignore this graphic for a minute. We're going to get to that in a minute. But Kieran says that we're surprisingly close. Let's have a look.
Yeah, I can take it.
So look, yeah, the guys were asking beforehand, how do we feel about giving some sort of a guideline in terms of dates? And I was like, really bad. Don't do that. We're setting ourselves up for failure and whatever. But the more that I think about it, we need to give you guys some sort of a guidance on when we're thinking about this. So we're close. As you can see, there's a lot of thought that has gone into this. Actually, this week we've got a couple of the developers, mainly Andre, who's going to lead this from the development side. He's going to go through all of the high level features, and he's going to pull out a very, very rough date at which we think we can deliver this vertical slice. How it sort of ties into the overall timing
So I'm not going to bore you with that stuff yet, but he's hoping for very soon. They're going to get started on it straight away and get the prototype building, which is really, really cool. I think we're going to see the vertical slice before the end of 2025. Now, I don't know how playable or fun that's going to be because it's mostly a prototype, but I expect us to have something in our hands, some sort of concrete idea of what the MMO-Lite is going to look like before the end of the year, easily by it sounds like from all this. Now, what Kira also wanted to mention is that Illuvium needs to finish the arena first. They're hoping to have it in a really good state by the end of July at least. We'll have a capital injection conversations from July until the start of Q4, and they want to get people excited during this time. That's where the vertical slice comes in. So it needs to be ready between July and the start of Q4. That's when they're hoping to have the vertical slice completed. It will be the first deliverable of the new MMO-Lite direction. They want it to be an end-to-end experience and a good representation of the gameplay loop. So, and they are pretty optimistic it can be done quickly. So what that looks like is you might go in, find a bunch of enemies, beat them so you don't die or whatever. You'll have all those mechanics in there. You might only have 1 or 2 progression trees for the ranger available in the vertical slice, just to see what the skill trees and what that kind of system might actually look like. So you'll have all that in there, you'll level up a little bit, and then you will go and you will take on more enemies, and then probably go on and take capture an alluvial or 2, maybe go jump into a breach encounter and get a little bit of loot from that, and then at the end you'll have some sort of boss battle, and they want to incorporate multiplayer elements into that as well. They want to try and do a multiplayer raid, because that's a really key, unique selling point, which is what they want to hit on here. They need to prove the core loops and make sure it's fun before progressing further. They need to test the stickiness of the systems, and that is what the vertical slice is all about. Some other things I should quickly mention, as they're going to want to optimize for lower end users. That's a high priority of the new code directors. Alluvials need to be more central to gameplay, also a high priority, and there's not enough content inside the game currently. They actually really like the base structure that the entire game has, but they need to fill it up with tons of cool stuff. And as I always say, content is king. Now let's hear about eggs and incubation in Illuvium.
How, players to collect heroes just by doing gameplay, but it's at a much reduced rate of efficiency as if you were to buy additional packs. And so this is kind of like modeled after some of those systems. So in a system like this, instead of like when you capture an alluvial, instead of capturing an alluvial, maybe you capture an egg. And it doesn't have to actually be a legitimate egg, but we'll think of an egg for now. And then each egg has an incubation period, and every player only has 1 incubation slot. You can purchase more. So if you want to,
So this would be the core monetization strategy of the MMO-Lite, is everyone can play for free, but paying for speed ups or paying for fuel so you can speed up different parts of the game is a really core mechanic. And honestly, I was a little bit skeptical at first. I want to make sure that people can play and have a good experience. I think that's important. I think this system here, like 198 days to get a Skyrox, is a little bit weird, but it only feels weird for someone who owns the entire collection like myself. For someone new coming into the game, it probably wouldn't feel that weird, because if you're going classic gacha, and gachas are all about having a lot of different unique characters, so it works really great for this sort of thing. People absolutely love Pokemon, that game on the phone. Oh, I can't remember its name. EX Masters or whatever. People love Genshin Impact. People spend a shit ton of money on all those sorts of games. So clearly it's a well thought out and it's a functional system. They're taking as much inspiration from that as they can. As he said, you would capture eggs instead of alluvials. I kind of like that idea in general. And maybe you get like you get this egg with like really good stats or whatever. Anyways. and players have one single incubation slot. Maybe they could spend 20 or 30 bucks to get a second incubation slot. Really great monetization there to begin with, and then there's some monetization for speeding up. Can spend to buy the packs or buy additional incubation spots, spend to level them up, and so on. There's so many different ways for people to actually buy into the game, but everyone could just play how they want. They might need to focus on one creature at a time, just leveling up their 3 or 4 main Aluvials. But if they want to get deeper into the game, they can do all this stuff and get all sorts of different Aluvials in their collection. 193 days is comparable to maxing a hero were to take in a gacha RPG, apparently. So that's the standard, 198 days, sorry. I think this should be way shorter personally, but it's really all about how long it takes you to get a set 2 of Aluvials out. Pokemon TCG Pocket does this really well, where it takes you about 30-40 days to complete the base set, I've been finding, and a new set comes out every 30 days. So really that's the important thing there. They could even have the ability to exchange speed up items on the marketplace, which would be really interesting, but restricting hatching to 1 Alluvial per day could restrict the possibility of bot farms. Basically, you don't need to eliminate bot farms entirely, you just need to restrict the incentives for them. If it takes them 200 days to get a Scoriox, they could sell that Scoriox for $1, probably not worth them going through all the trouble of trying to bot that system. And so there's no incentive there, and you're probably mostly safe from those sorts of things. It would also allow players to collect characters purely through gameplay for free, which I think is really important for this revamp of the game. But I'm hoping they had a set 2 as well. And it requires a time investment to acquire Alluvials. These mechanics can make Alluvials feel so much more special than they currently do in the game. They also talked about wanting to add lots of different syncs to the gameplay, so different ways to burn Alluvials and assets, so that you get other benefits out of the gameplay systems. And I'm hoping like you can burn Fireys to level up your Fiery faster. That's the one thing I really, really want to see personally. And I just hope a set 2 wave of Alluvials release at this time to give veterans of the ecosystem something new to find, battle, and capture, and also enhance the meta of things like Arena, the MMO-Lite, and so on and so forth. So I hope you learned something today. Don't forget to subscribe for even more Illuvium guides. Tune into my weekly podcast for the latest news, and use my creator code Scoriox to show your support. Have a good one.